Welcome to Remainders, where we talk about our favorite movies. Where today we're going to be talking about the 2008 documentary Anvil, the Story of Anvil, which I'm very excited about. My name is Patrick, and with me is an encyclopedia of knowledge on film, Darren Vorel. How's it going, bud?
Be a lot better if Top Gun Maverick had won the Academy Award for Best Picture, but I digress. I'm doing very well, and we got a lot to talk about today. Anvil, holy cow!
I know you're going to be a little butthurt on Tom Cruise and Top Gun not taking home, but alas, we'll get to that. I want to talk about that, but we'll get to that later. So
okay, we have to talk about the Oscars, of course. But
I think so.
Is the topic of the day a documentary? I didn't realize it was re-released in 2022. So when I went to go watch this film, it said 2022 release date, and then I was reading up on it. It looks like it was re-released in theaters in 2022, but it's actually originally from 2008. Is that correct? Yeah, I missed. I think I heard about the re-release like just after it happened, so I didn't see it really anywhere. Like while here in Chicago, at least, if it got any screenings, it definitely wasn't on my radar or anything, because I definitely would have gone, and because this movie has a devoted fan base, and it's definitely would have been fun to go see it with a bunch of people who loved it as much. Where did you see it at? Where was the first time that you encountered this film? Because again, most of these picks lately have been Pat's suggestions, and they're movies that I weren't on my radar. I didn't even know Anvil existed before today.
Oh, so I'm pretty excited. Yeah, I think you had mentioned that. I mean, so this was a similar one to King of Kong. It was released within the same couple of years. Honestly think it was still the first time watching it on the DVD Netflix. The actual DVDs when you would get them in the mail.
I enjoyed this watch very much. It was reminiscent of Searching for Sugar Man. Have you seen that documentary before?
Man, that's an insane movie. I love that. The little difference about that is, and not to harp on like Anvil or anything, but like the music Rodriguez made, his like two and a half albums are fucking incredible. Like that's what makes that documentary.
Yeah, the tone is a little different because of the fact of like the music is different, right? We're talking about a heavy metal band here in Anvil, and that's a lot different than Rodriguez, who's kind of like a little bit more, I don't know, I guess it would be pop music back then, but it was just a little bit more easy listening, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, being such a Bob Dylan fan, he had more than enough influences coming from Dylan. But like, yeah, that story of him being like a Bob Dylan level influence in other countries, it's so good.
So you saw it when it came out on DVD, Netflix, and now you're suggesting it. Looks like you probably revisited this through the years.
Oh yeah. This is a comfort movie, just like King of Kong. This is one that I can definitely turn to for this one. I would say even more inspiring than King of Kong. Both of these movies were kind of doing because it was based off of your pick of American Movie, which is so great. But this one, I think, has like so many similarities to American Movie, just in terms of being kind of having the Midwest working class sensibilities of somebody kind of really not giving up on their dreams in an artistic endeavor, and all the support that comes around it in terms of friends and family, and all kind of the things that maybe drag you down because of that as well. And then just following that through and making the art that much more valuable to yourself.
Yeah, I think for listeners who haven't seen the film, maybe give a little synopsis if you wouldn't mind. And there's a lot to say about this film, but I think we should at least position it a little bit to understand what these characters are. It's funny because when we watch documentaries, I call them characters, but these are people in real life, and they have real issues just like we do. So we're watching a film about some folks that are creative, had some success, but are in a different place now that the years have gone by.
Hell yeah. Yeah. So Anvil is the band that came out hot in the early 80s. They were playing alongside Whitesnake. They were just such a huge influence on the emerging metal scene, such as like Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax. I just found out actually that Anthrax originally started as an Anvil cover band. So it's like when they, yeah. So, and we see Scott Ian from Anthrax at the beginning of this documentary. You really get like a full on understanding of the influence that Anvil had in the early 80s. You got Lemmy talking about him, Lars Ulrich from Metallica talking about what an influence they were. And they were just a band that just went nowhere. You know, they continued making records, kind of self-produced, it seems like, throughout the 80s, but they just didn't really become the hot-selling commodity that's like so many other metal bands did throughout the 80s. And this is the story of Lips and Robb Reiner, the two founding members of the band, and what their life was like at the time, the 2008, still working odd jobs, supporting their families with that, but then never ever really giving up on the band itself. And they think they're up to 17 albums now. I think it was about 13 at the time of this movie came out. And this is what kind of makes this movie so special is that it is that dedication that's pushing like, so the band started in 1973, I think officially. So, I mean, we're pushing like 50 years that the band's actually been in formation because they started it so young.
It's interesting because at the beginning, most documentaries do a good job of showing, especially if it's something where it's like these people deserve more accolades than they got over the years. Most music documentaries that way will kind of explain, well, why did they not make it as big as, let's say, Megadeth or all these other bands that they open up about? Metallica, obviously, their peers. Why did Anvil fall by the wayside? And the only real thing that they do in this is say that, well, it's kind of like the luck of the draw, you know. There's I think it's Lemmy who kind of says that, right? Or maybe it was Slash at the beginning that are just saying like, you know, sometimes it's just right place, right time, because why not Anvil? You know, they had the songs, they had a great record. They explore a little bit that like maybe, you know, the band thinks, oh, it's because the quality of our songs didn't continue going because we didn't have great recordings, but that can't be it. You know, I really believe as a musician myself that you can tell a good song whether or not it's recorded well. Sometimes it's like really shitty 3 chords, but the intention and the lyrics or whatever it might be do make you, as a person who's listening, enjoy it, whether it's recorded well or not. So I kind of don't buy that. I'm not exactly sure what it is though. And then I also think that like good documentaries kind of show where people are in life afterwards. And they do a good job of that in this film, but I think it does fall a little short.
And that's what makes this such a relatable film for any artist of any type. Anybody who's ever tried to do anything where, you know, the income is not quite guaranteed. This is a totally relatable story. I think that's why it was so well received from everybody who saw it at the time and why it's kind of resonated, and certainly why it's resonated with me is because it is a pretty universal story of living in modern society and still wanting to kind of create something and have that be a part of your life, whether or not monetary or not. So,
yeah, I know it's kind of hard it's a tough pill to swallow sometimes where you feel like all this creative energy, everything, like being a creative person, you're putting so much of yourself out into the world. And that's hard enough as it is. That's why there's so many mental health people in that field. You're putting so much of yourself and there's so much rejection. But the highs are super high. And Anvil had experienced that. That's almost like the worst thing that could have happened to them is that they had some success. Because, you know, you don't want to give up your dream then because you're always trying to attain to be at that level again. And that can be kind of dangerous. You know, you got to walk a fine line. You have a family. And I think the best way somebody put it in the documentary was, you know, it's time to do something else. But that doesn't mean that you failed or anything. It's just time to do something else in your life that, I don't know, might bring a little bit more happiness. Like you're always thinking that where I could get to make it, to get back on that stage in front of 60,000 people or whatever it was like back in the day, that is happiness. Well, maybe you're not looking at like the other things that could make you even infinitely more happy. You're just always chasing after something that is in the past. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I did think about that on this last rewatch. 2 rewatches. I watched it twice in the last 2 weeks because it's such a joy to take in. Yeah, I did. That did run across my mind that, like, man, what if they didn't have that type of like huge, instant success? Not quite instant. You know, they were around for a little while, but like in the early '80s, they were just really regarded critically and commercially for like a minute. And I thought to myself, yeah, like, well, what if that didn't quite happen to that level? I mean, who's to know? Maybe they would have given up, or they would given up, taken a different trajectory. Who knows? But like, I definitely think you have something there with saying that like that early success could have been like giving them a limited idea of what success is. You know what I mean?
Thing that you see with a lot of musicians that get older.
Yeah.
They either do have like a little bit more money now because like, you know, they had the fallback plan of the job that like did give them a little bit of money. And it's like, well, what happens in Anvil is almost kind of the same thing. To put up the money, like they go to this old, you know, guy who recorded them in the first record, and they think
CT.
re-team with him.
Yeah.
Then we're going to have like so much more success than just like recording it down the street at the local recording studio. We need to get the guy who produced the first record. It's going to sound great. And of course, what does this guy do? He comes in and he's like, it's going to cost this much money. You know, everybody is in it for cash. And especially he has a name and he knows that. So he's using that. And then of course, Anvil's wanting to use him. So they find a way to get the money, which leads to kind of a beautiful moment between Lips and his sister, where his sister does lend him the money to do this recording, which, you know, she's got to be thinking like, I'm never going to see this money again. You know, like this is probably not going to happen for them. Everybody seems to think that, even their wives and everything. Like there's that beautiful cut when it's like, it's over.
Yeah. Dude, Robb's wife and sister are both just like quick editing, but like there's a small part when Robb's wife is like, well, how long do I have to wait for success? It's just like
makes you think as like the viewer, like, right, like there's other people involved here. It's not just you,
right,
as a band, you know.
It's just it was an easy way to set up a little bit of like internal conflict for Robb and the band itself, with like all these people who are you know, more or less depending on him, but like you know, he's doing it for his own art. But what is success in terms of monetarily when you're trying to raise a family and have kids? I mean, yeah, that's a good point about when Lips asked his sister for the money. I mean, they seem pretty close, so. I mean, I would imagine that she wouldn't have given the money if she didn't actually believe in him, whether or not the return on investment was going to actually be there. But like sticking with the money, it's like, and talking about Lips jobs, like I love direction style, just the cut to and the scenes when he's trying to raise like extra money for the recording with this high class producer, and he gets a job with one of his fans.
Like
small company selling sunglasses over the phone. And it's just such a great scene because you have these, I think it's Mad Dog is the name of the fan who's been like a 20-year, 30-year Anvil fan.
From at the beginning, like
yeah, he's got such the perfect mullet and a face for an 80s metal fan. So good. And I mean, you know, his description of like working at the sunglass place is great. You could definitely make a shit whack of money if you know what you're doing. And it's definitely a good way to put it with Lips trying to sell himself, which does not come across at all. So he basically says, he's like, I've been trained my whole life to be nice, and this job makes you do the opposite.
Yeah, it makes you do the opposite. Yeah, that was a beautiful little thing to put in there. The filmmakers did a great job with that to kind of show, I don't know, where does he fit? You know, he is obviously great on stage. He can play the guitar really well. And he can, you know, he's a showman, you know, but like, there's something that happens in music too. It's like, you know, when we're younger and we're playing, you don't have so much responsibility, right? So you can kind of go out there and tour and do that kind of stuff. But then there's also the fact that you have like a lot of, I feel like you have a lot of people on your side when you're younger, like, oh, this is your dream, go do it. You know, the world's your oyster, you're young, but then you start to get like creep up there, and your fans do as well, right? So a lot of times you start out and the fans are really just your friends that are from high school or whatever, and you have a community and nobody's got anything to do on a Saturday night, so like, let's go drink in the parking lot and then go see, you know, the Scissors play. And that's like fucking awesome. Like, that's what's growing up's about. It's like, but that eventually goes away because people have responsibility and different things like that. So not only does the band change, but so do the fans. And that's kind of last week with my pick of the week with the Menzingers song. What I was trying to explain is that their music, I feel like they're always writing for their fans because their fans are growing with them. So it's always like about like the time period in their lives that they're in during that recording process. And that means that the fans will keep coming back because I feel like they can relate to the songs. It's not like you're singing about the bubblegum pop girl in high school anymore. No, you're talking about real shit. Like, I have a problem with drinking. Shit, I'm getting divorced, you know, like real life stuff that happens to people in their 30s and stuff like that. So this is kind of my long-winded way of saying, you know, people grow up and grow out of things, especially like a very tight funnel like metal or punk. You know, people can say like, I'm still punk, you know, whatever, but you know, eventually you get some khakis and eventually you get fucking flip-flops and you're walking around your backyard. That's what happens to people when they grow up, but they're still like, but yeah, I'm punk, you know, or yeah, I'm a metal guy. The nice thing is in this documentary, you see a couple people that are like, I have not given up my metal shit, metal till I die, you know. And but then again, that's a small percentage of people, like, of your fans. Like, if you're an aging musician, chances are you're only going to have probably like 1% of your fan base stick around with you forever. That's like, you know, ride or die.
Yeah. I mean, you said you definitely get a sense of who's been sticking with them throughout all the years, pretty early on with a couple of their fans. But yeah, I mean, I think that's, you know, I think what you're touching on is, I mean, that's life for most people in any capacity, is that you kind of have a little bit more of like a push for something when you're younger. You know, society and people around you will just kind of give you a little bit more encouragement. But if you're not showing results by a certain age, you know, society doesn't necessarily give you that same support or kind of enthusiasm. There's certain, you know, these are all like societally imposed, but like benchmarks of like what you're supposed to be doing by a certain age at a certain time. And obviously it's all bullshit, but like that's kind of the implicit messaging in a lot of what goes on with people in work and their lives and what they want to do and what they can't do and what they can do. And yeah, I think it just it becomes a little bit harder later in life, and kind of that's what's so inspiring, is that they're in their 50s fucking not giving up on the shit that they want to do. Well,
you know, it also is something that as a creative person, you can't just turn that off. That's not like,
yeah, that's I think a lot of Lips, what he says kind of really tunes in with that.
Yeah, and that's the shame of it all, is that like a lot of times, you know, people are going to school for art or whatever, and their parents kind of maybe I've experienced this, not by my parents, but I've seen it happen to some, you know, people that I know, where their parents just like did kind of, I mean, my grandma actually was like that. She didn't want me to paint because she said there's no money in it, you know? But she knew from experience, because she was a painter herself and never really sold any paintings or whatever. She just did it because she loved it, you know? And,
yeah.
But as a job and as a career, that's something that I think our parents, or at least people who are trying to help their children along, kind of deter you from. Don't chase after, you know, something that only like a small percentage of people make it big or, you know, have success in, because your whole life is going to be a struggle. And in one way you can understand that, of course, you know, parents don't want their children to struggle, but it's also like a shame, because I don't think sometimes people realize that that's not a choice to either, you know, be a doctor. Like if you're a doctor, I imagine that you love it and you love anatomy and, you know, different things like that. And you can understand like all those things because just like that's your passion. But like if you're a creative person and you love to paint or whatever, it's not like you're going to go through your life, you can turn it off. And if you do, you're going to be miserable for the rest of your life, you know? And that's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely get, the parental influence that each of them experienced, and Lips a little bit more closer to like what you're saying is like coming from a little bit more of a conservative family that didn't necessarily condone like going into the arts because it was a little unstable economically. I think his mother basically voiced exactly that. Like she just wanted her children to be successful and whatnot. And her siblings all kind of went into more conservative, traditional routes, and kind of saying like, yeah, but that's who he was. He was an artist. He'd rather live in poverty and do that rather than live in a modest lifestyle doing something he didn't care about. But then like Robb, like he talks about his father, who was like a Hungarian Jew who escaped Auschwitz, and he was a huge influence on Robb, like saying like, if this what makes you happy, then I'm 100% in support of it. Like giving him like his first drum kit at like 12 or 13. Just really showing him that support. And then he went on to become like one of the major influencing drummers of the metal scene. And so it is those kind of touches. This movie covers like so efficiently, like every kind of bullet point of like why they kind of went into it and like what their lives have led up to then at this point.
It's a nice way to also talk a little bit about the nuclear family that is the band, right? We're talking mostly about Lips and Robb because they're the founding members, but there's a bunch of, or I think 2 other members that we meet who had joined in like the 90s that were just big fans of Anvil, and they're like, I can't believe I'm even in this band.
Yeah.
Like, and they don't want to give up on it and they love it. But there's this push and pull, and this brotherly sort of family thing between Robb and Lips all the time. And it's interesting now that we're talking about their parents and the way that they were brought up, you know, now I'm thinking a little bit more of that might be influenced into who they became, because Robb is very, very even keel. He's very calm. He kind of walks away from, you know, arguments or fights. And Lips is very, especially when the promoter doesn't pay him, you know, he pulls him in and he's like, you know, I worked, pay me for my work.
Yeah.
Robb is very like cool and even keel and like, all right, well, this is what it is. And we'll also talk about like what I think is like the real big glaring omission in Robb's life is that he's like one hell of a painter, and he probably should have been following that instead of the music, you know? I mean, I thought his paintings were incredible. Absolutely incredible when they were showing that, and I was just sitting there being like, why did this guy never like really pursue that, like put all the passion he's putting into Anvil into that? And you know, it's because he loves Lips, and that's, I think, at the end of the day, the point. These 2 people love each other. Like, they're gonna fire each other and they're gonna quit. That's how bands do it, because you're working so closely, you're clashing on certain things, and you know, in a creative atmosphere, when you have a bunch of other people you're working with, there's an interesting dynamic there, you know, and it's really hard to play well with others in that, because it does become like a family, you know, you become really close. And I love their relationship, and that they won't give up on each other, even though like they're not the same person.
Yeah, no, I mean, they started playing together when they were like 14 or whatnot. So it's like the chances are you're going to meet somebody who kind of is just the same as you and then grow into that same type of person is pretty slim. So I definitely like that. But I mean, I fucking love that scene when Robb is going around his house showing the paintings. You just get so much of a sense of like who he is and what gives him drive. And I mean, the editing in that, so they had just gotten back from their European tour, which was definitely a huge bust. They said half the events didn't go well. None of them really paid them anything. You were saying they got into fights with a couple of the promoters that didn't want to pay them. And so they get back. It is kind of like a turning point for them, because they're just like, well, we just had this whole tour that was supposed to be great, and it didn't. It went nowhere, and so we're back to normal life. But then what it covers is Lips and his family, spending time with his kids, and then Robb showing all of the art that he does. Like I think he said, he's just got this area in this house where he just paints, and it's just for himself. And it really is like all those scenes that like, this is what gives them the drive to keep on going back to the band, because they, like you're saying, they love each other and they love the band and they love the music that much more. And this is the stuff that they go back to give them more energy to keep on returning to the band and making the music.
And that's the funny thing about the paintings. He explains that, there's like these scenes, which I love. He talked a lot about Edward Hopper, and you could totally see that as an influence in his paintings, that these like scenes where like you kind of stumble upon them and there's really nobody else around or very few people, or if there are a couple people there, you can kind of like be the voyeur of that scene and enter into it in a calming way. And I think that's what he was saying. It's like that's so much of what painting is. It's like a calm. And I think it's an interesting thing about musicians. People think like, oh, we want to be around people all the time, or it's loud and everything. But a lot of people that are musicians and stuff like that like really yearn for that quiet and that peace. And that's why I think a lot of musicians do paint.
Oh yeah, I mean that makes total sense. I wanted to ask, have you ever gotten into a fight while you were recording an album the way they do?
Oh yeah.
No waffling back and forth. You're just like, yep, definitely.
The problem with me is that like I always wanted to. I feel like a lot of times there's conversations that people have about, is it a democracy or is it a dictatorship? And I was always in the position where I was the lead singer, but it was also like sort of my band, right? I would do all the flyers, I would do all the songwriting, I would do a lot of the writing, and you kind of become the leader in that role. You talk to the venue people, you book the shows. And so when you're doing all that by yourself, you kind of become in this like role, and either the folks that are in the band look at you as like, are grateful for it, which is rare. Or they kind of resent you in a little bit,
Yeah.
Or they also can be in a position where they will say, well, I just need to come and play my guitar. I don't really need to do anything else. Darren's doing it all. And like that shit would build over time. And my issue in playing music would always be that I would want everybody to feel like they were a part of it, that would encourage like, ideas and stuff like that. And I didn't want it to be a dictatorship because I didn't, feel like that was right. Everybody should have a little bit of creativity. Sometimes that was messy because that would make the songs disjointed and not super clear focused. And then sometimes it would be things would like bother me and they would build up, and then at one point all of a sudden I would fucking lose it. Like I would become like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, like, and everyone would be like, where did this come from? Like, whoa. And it's like, dude, you've been fucking needling me for months, and like it blew up. So I think being in a band taught me how to like voice my concern about things a lot earlier than letting it build inside so that I become like the steam pot and blow one day.
Yeah.
So that's happened a bunch of times, but mostly in practice scenarios, thank God. Not at shows, but there's a lot of bands we played with that, they have like fights on stage. Like I love seeing those reels on social media, by the way, with like the band fights that happen. Oh man.
Yeah, I guess I've seen that once or twice. Yeah.
You can't unsee them. They're fucking amazing.
I'm trying to think of any high profile bands that I've seen that. I don't know. I mean, I've seen you play a bunch of times. You definitely got you definitely have your cool on stage. So yeah, it's like I would have never expected for you to bust out a fight at the show, but yeah, I've never seen you in a recording session, so that's why I was curious about that. Yeah,
the recording sessions are a little bit more like they show that in Anvil, where there's like some butting heads and stuff like that. It's easy.
So they get the money and they go to CT, this high profile producer that worked on their early albums, like you were saying, and they go to England, I think it is, and they're
He seems British somehow, yeah.
Yeah, and they're recording, and they definitely blow up at each other. It's mostly coming from Lips, but at the same time, Robb is a, chill people sometimes have ways of like pushing people's limits in different ways. Exactly. So it's like, and you don't really see that on screen, but like you don't quite know like what made them get to that point. But at this point, Lips is just going off on Robb, and yeah.
Well, that's kind of a good point. I'm glad you said that. Like, chill people do have a way, and they know they're doing it. Like, by being even keel and by being chill, they know they're like really pissing somebody off. So like, it's just like another way of like, doing.
I'm a chill person. I'm a very chill person, but I don't think I've ever intentionally pissed somebody off by doing that. But I can think of times when like I probably, didn't react in a way and that was expected, and that probably just made it worse.
Yeah, and I feel like that's another thing in creative environments. I know this happened to the Scissors, and when you get to that point, you finally like are trying to get to, like when things are happening for you, when you're selling out gigs, when you're got record labels coming to talk to you, everything starts to implode. And that's like the shame about being a young person in a creative environment. I feel I don't want to like pigeonhole that for all people, but you're not equipped to deal with a lot of that. When the success happens, it's almost like, okay, you're got this thing that you're trying to get to, and you're working, and that's like the fun, like especially when you're younger, because things start to like grow, you're making more music, and all of a sudden you get to this point and things start to happen. I don't think most people are too well equipped to like deal with the success that does come. I see most people get to that finish line, and all they have to do is like go like this and reach over and grab the tape and walk through, and they fucking fall and don't get back up again right before they could cross that finish line, but they get right there. It's such an age-old story. So in a way, I feel like in Anvil, it's happening when they get the money and they're finally in there. I mean, Lips does say, there's a lot of stress on me, man. And you can imagine, like, that's his money, and he says it a lot, that a lot of people are counting on him, like, and I felt that too. Like when you're in a leadership role, you feel like I got a lot of people here that are like, they're believing in this, they're believing in me, and I can't let them down. So there's a lot of fucking stress. And anybody who's not putting all of that in there, you can't really understand it fully. So I kind of see both sides when that fight happens. But I think there's a lot of factors that play into that.
Yeah, but again, I mean, this is a documentary. It's choosing what it's showing. So, the actual occurrence could have been, pretty good. I mean, and that's another thing about like all these documentaries we're watching. It's like documentaries are still a point of view. It's like, it's not like you're just watching the truth on screen. It's you're watching the point of view of the filmmaker or the filmmakers and what they're deciding to show in order to create the type of conflict that they want to demonstrate.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's got to be entertaining too for someone to
right.
watch it. You're absolutely right about that. I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
And man, is it entertaining as hell.
I mean, Some Kind of Monster. Have you seen that?
So I saw bits and pieces of that when it first came out. I saw a clip on about Lips talking about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he almost sounded a little salty about it because he was like this is this famous band talking about their struggles, whereas like Anvil is this not famous band who actually has struggles. He was kind of he was framing it almost in that way, but not quite. But
that's the hook of it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Fucking insanely, probably the most successful metal band of all time has all these problems, and they have to hire like this fucking therapist and shit who turns out to be a total quack. And
that's right. Yeah, I had only seen scenes of it like right when it first came out, so I don't quite remember.
Like, we could
I should.
Like a whole week with like Searching for Sugar Man, Some Kind of Monster.
Hell yeah.
All the music documentaries, but when you get a chance to see it again, watch it in full. It's quite interesting.
I did re-listen to that Metallica Lou Reed album last year, and man, is that a trip?
I didn't even know that existed.
Oh man, Lulu. I think it was maybe 2013. notoriously just hated by people at the time. Like critically, it got like, I think it might have gotten like a 0 in Rolling Stone. Like, but it's as unusual as you'd expect, and I think it will age much, much better than what people initially reacted to.
Well, now I'm gonna go and check that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's no, I mean, Lou Reed made Metal Music Machine, which was like a super experimental album that obviously didn't really sound a whole lot of his other hits, but like it was definitely nothing new to him in terms of like wanting to like push the boundaries of like non-traditional rock and roll and pushing the limits of like metal in a more like artistic way, quote unquote. And that's, you definitely see it in that album as well. And yeah, I would definitely recommend checking it out. Like if anything, just for to hear the two of them together on this very unusual album. But again, I think it's going to age pretty well. So
yeah, that's amazing. So yeah, I learn something new every time we do one of these recordings. So I'll have to check that out. And yeah, I mean, Anvil itself is like something that I believe is still going, right? So they
oh yeah, they were at Reggie's just 2 years ago. I missed them, but they were, yeah. So that, I was trying to go, but I didn't end up going to see them. Would have been fun, but yeah, they're definitely still touring and everything. So
cool. Yeah, I mean, I know Rodriguez is still Rodriguez, right? For Sugar Man. Yeah. I think all the way up until the pandemic, and I don't know if he got back to doing it, but I always wanted to go see him.
Right. Yeah, he had another one. He had a show. I think he did play Northern Ireland. Yeah. But yeah, I missed him too. So
he's obviously playing closer to you, probably because he's Midwest, but
possibly. Yeah, I don't know if he's like still based out of that, but yeah. I mean, so this movie, so the director, Sasha, he was a roadie for Anvil when he was a teen. That's how this relationship started. He was just a fan of.
At the end of the credits, did you?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. So I've seen a couple recent interviews. There was a screening. It looked like within the last year or two, Peter Dinklage was hosting it, and it was Lips, Robb, and the director, Sasha, talking to the audience, just answering questions. And so
theaters last year, so that must have been last year.
It must have been that initial run that you were talking about for the re-release. And it just illuminated how much the director has been friends with them, like ever since he was like 15 or 16. Because like he was just a fan of Anvil, so he was just like, hey, I'll do anything. So he was like being a roadie for the band for a while, and that's kind of how their relationship started. He ended up directing the movie. And I mean, on the movie's release, it was, I think it gave them so much validation, the three of them. There was an encounter Lips had where he was at some event, and both Jimmy Page and Paul McCartney commented like on the movie and how much they loved it. I think Jimmy Page quoted like, "You give us all musicians hope." So to have like Jimmy Page telling you this in this as you're coming out with this movie about like how you haven't really seen the success you wanted, it just pushed them that much further. And Sasha, he was like saying he was at like at a director's lunch or something, and Scorsese approached him, and he's like, "Oh, you direct an Anvil? I screened it for my friends just last week because I love it so much." So it's like, talk about like a crowning achievement in like a director's life, and be like, "Oh, Scorsese's showing personal screenings of my movies to his friends because he loves them that much." So
I just saw a picture of Scorsese in the back of a car with Isabella Rossellini, and the caption was, "After their car broke down, Wim Wenders shot this photo of them." And I was like, can you imagine that, those people like hanging out together, like in the desert, like
yeah,
it breaks down. And I don't know. Paris, Texas is such a great movie. Have you seen?
Yes. Oh yeah, for sure. We have a Wim Wenders double feature as a possible future covering. I think that and Wings of Desire would be a dope combination. Was the picture in black and white?
No, it wasn't. It was
okay.
in the desert or something. And it was like I don't know. It's just like one of those things where I think about those like heavyweights hanging out, like you were just saying, like
Yeah.
director of a movie and Scorsese comes up to you and says, "I loved your fucking movie." I mean, would you just fucking die, right? I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I love, and especially Scorsese. You know, he gets music, of course. You know, so.
Yeah, I think his quote actually was, I think I wrote it down. I think he said, he's like, it was one of the best music movies ever, at least documentaries. It's just basically coming from Sasha saying like this was the experience of like after this film coming out and like seeing the reception, not just like commercially, but also like critically.
I think literally I've said what I have to say about this documentary, but I don't know if you have any closing thoughts.
I mean, yeah, like I said, this is just like a go-to movie for me for inspiration. I mean, I love metal. I love the story that these characters put on. It's like their dedication to their art, and it's just like it's such a relatable and empathetic film for the creative process. And so that's what's always kind of like driven me to keep on going back to it.
That's the thing is like as being like a person who's like now a little bit older and you know in the artistic field. It's kind of funny because I can watch films like this and be like, is this my life? You know, am I pushing and nothing's happening? You know, it's like you struggle with that every day as a creative person. That you know is what like society has told me forever true? Am I gonna like amount to nothing? Does my shit matter? Does anybody care? You know, but then you got to push through that shit, and you got to do that your entire career of being a creative artist. That's part of it. You have to go through all of that challenges, and it's not like you don't have to do that in any other job, but especially in creative process, you know, when you have so much that you're putting into emotionally, you have to be stronger than, you know, your mind and realize you're lying to yourself half the time when you say you're no good.
Well, amen to that. But I mean, I think the movie like wraps that up, especially because of Lips and his outlook. Like he like at the end. So at the end, they ended up on getting booked on a large festival in Japan, and they're worried about whether or not anybody's going to show up. Their first build at like noon on a Saturday. Yeah, and so they walk on stage. It's completely packed. You know, it's like and that was, you know, it could have been, Sasha, the director, was talking about. It's like, it totally could have been just an empty stage, but like, this is how we were just needed a way to end the movie. And the movie happened to end with a completely packed stage while they're in Japan. And so, I mean, right after that, they're showing the shots of Lips and Robb walking around Japan, and it's like you have like an overdub of Lips talking about his life, and he's basically straight up saying it's like, yeah, I mean, we keep on doing this, we have some ups and downs, but it's like it really is the friends you have, the relationships you make, and everything else between that makes life worth living. And it's all like while they're just exploring Japan just as friends and spending the time together, and it's pretty. I mean, it's in a cinematic way, it's pretty clear. It's like, yeah, you can have success and whatever it means to that, but it's like the relationships you have that make life worth living.
Yeah, and you get for sure that Lips appreciates the fact that like even if they made no money, like at least we got out there and we were able to play in front of people, even if it was 2 people. Like that's right. Something that a musician says your whole life. But it is nice to get that payoff at the end, as you know, a person in the audience rooting for this band, because you've become, you know, pretty close with them over the course of the hour and a half or whatever the film's length is. But by the end, you're hoping so much that is going to be a sold out show, and you know, that people are going to show up at 11 a.m. in Japan for Anvil, and they do. And that's what Lips says. He says, "I feel bad for the promoters that, you know, have to pay us for this," you know, and he's empathizing with like other people that are involved, because it's like he gets that it's a machine that runs everything. It's not just them, you know. Yeah, it's kind of a nice little perfect package at the end that everybody kind of wins. Yeah, and I mean they have been going stronger. Like I saw an interview
from like 5 years ago, and they've been a self-sustaining band kind of really since the movie came out. Like the band's been the economic engine for their work since then. You know, it seems like the documentary kind of put them just over that edge a little bit. And so that's kind of been their experience since the documentary came out. And I was thinking a little bit about technology and the way music is produced and consumed since this movie came out. It's like we're here in 2023, and the way music was made and consumed even in 2008 is just so much different. And I almost think like the way that, like, you know, having a CD pressing is not as essential anymore. You can put your music on Spotify. It just, and I think music production, as far as I know, is just a little bit more accessible. So there's fewer gatekeepers in music now. And I think with, you know, the fact that they already had 30 years of like social currency, plus the fact now that music can be a little bit more, you know, have a little bit more ownership about the production and getting it to fans, I think that has probably been beneficial to them, at least since 2008 and the way they release their albums.
100%. I feel like that's the leg up that a lot of people, you know, have now. But it's just
yeah, I mean, like, I'm not a musician. I don't make music, but like, I'm sure it's an extremely different experience now, the way musicians make music and connect that to their fans now, as opposed to like, you know, when we were growing up buying CDs and whatnot.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at like the last 20 years, for instance, of what's been happening and how, you know, around 2008, they would have been like on MySpace, you know, and maybe like had to worry about dealing with LimeWire or Napster, which was being sued at the time by Metallica, right? I think it was around that time or before that, you know, then Spotify comes out and it's sort of like the streaming era comes in, and now you're looking at, you know, Reels and TikToks and stuff like that, where bands are literally becoming famous because they got their song to go viral on a TikTok. So the landscape has, of course, changed. I think the idea of having something, I talk about it a lot, like that's different, original, and exciting in whatever art you're creating, it kind of can be plugged into whatever platform, right? Like, you just have to be good at what you do and exciting, and you connect to people through what you're trying to say. If you can do that, I don't think it really matters the platform, because I think it'll catch on eventually, you know. I think you just have to be brave enough to weather the storm.
It's a tall order for a lot of people, but one reason, again, why I love this movie so much is they definitely have walked the walk, putting in pushing on 50 years with the band. So,
well, let's talk about, if we're done with this, we can talk about another band that's been around for a long time that you love, current right now, The Cure.
Oh.
Screen captures of Robert Smith, like basically now the biggest hero of all time in music, happened because of like a fucking problem with Ticketmaster, and he's the hero because he's saying what? Hey, fuck that. You know, we were trying to make these tickets cheap, and the fees are more than the ticket prices. That's not cool.
I don't know how much you're familiar. I'm not too familiar with the structure of it, but they went through the verified fans kind of route, which is the way to kind of eliminate scalping. So no physical tickets, which I was actually just thinking about recently, how much I miss having a physical ticket as like a memento from concerts. So unfortunately, that's not really a thing we experience anymore. But then also,
okay, I was just talking with some of my friends about baseball tickets and like the clubs used to get.
Yeah. It's really any tickets. And then I don't know how this actually I mean, there's a 4 ticket limit, and there's only, you had to go through a verified fan where you're like, I mean, I don't know if it's an actual apt description, but like all you have to do is really put your name ahead of time, and you get put in a lottery before the general sale to the public. And so either way, this did keep scalping down, and they kept the prices down. I mean, there were like $20 tickets for The Cure, which is pretty damn cheap, really, for like any like major concerts at like major venues, for sure. I sent that one screenshot. It was 4 tickets, so it was $80, but then the fees were basically more than double it. It turned out to like $180 for like the whole thing, and that was pretty accurate description of like what the fees that went into like for all these tickets now. So I don't know. Like, I mean, everybody like noticed all these fees coming up, emerging over like the last 10 years with the way Ticketmaster has been doing their practices. And, you know, they basically are a monopoly. So that's kind of where it's at with the process. And Robert Smith is not having any shit with it. So, yeah. I mean, he's only one man. He's only one man. He's an artist and he has a lot of pull, but he's still just one person. So it's like his ability to actually take on Ticketmaster is kind of limited. But I mean, they did concede, and basically it's like have like a refund now for anybody who bought those initial round of tickets. I think the price is depending on like which tickets you bought and how many, but like he did get them to basically say, yeah, this is too much, and we'll give a partial refund to all the tickets that have been bought so far, which is pretty unheard of, actually. Like that's certainly anything Ticketmaster's ever done or any other major ticket provider. So.
Yeah, that's some newsworthy shit that I figured you'd be really into. But yeah, talk about like somebody who is like a musical legend, but like also still like showcasing how badass he can be, you know, in 2023. I mean, everybody's talking about that now, and like how like he's like, finally got them to, you know, give a little bit of credit back to the people who bought these tickets for so much. I think there was like something that I read that people are like kind of fucking had it with stuff. Like there's like a Bruce Springsteen fanzine or something that like went down. I don't quote me because I don't know, but like people are like, well, I'm not going to run this shit anymore because like your tickets are ridiculous. Like I'm, you know, and then when they did the whole,
wait, a fan of Bruce Springsteen was saying this about going to a show?
Yeah, from the way I understood it was like that there was fans that had like put together like a fanzine that like, you know, maybe like a fan club, and they like disassociated with it because they're like, you know, you got all these fees and all these like insane prices for your like concerts and nobody can afford that anymore. I mean, again, no quote.
Yeah. No, for sure.
But I mean, again, people are kind of tired of this shit. And like, of course, when it's an economy that's hard and your, you know, price of your food is going up, it's like, I get it. Like everyone needs to make money and stuff like that. But do you need to like make like yacht money? You know, like what the fuck?
I mean, it is a simple case of a monopoly. I mean, you know, Ticketmaster has the monopoly on it for the most part. And so they just get to do that. It's an age-old aspect of capitalism. It's like why monopolies are bad. It's like if you have one person controlling everything, they set the prices, and there's not really like what are you going to do about it? It's like so. So
switch gears to the Oscars. What did you think? Did you watch?
I did watch, and I was pretty excited to see Guillermo del Toro win, and as well as Brendan Fraser take home the Oscar. So.
Love Guillermo del Toro's speech. Very animation forward. I thought that was cool. Brendan Fraser's speech, I was kind of like, thought I'd like that better.
No, really? I mean, I barely paid attention to the speech. I got to be honest. I don't give a shit about most speeches. So it's like I watch for like who's winning and see. I mean, so. The Oscars really are fucking annoying. Like I get like why nobody watches anymore, why it's like so mocked. It's like just to watch these people kind of pat themselves in the back. And then like we're like the hugest lovers of movies, but it's like there's a limit to like watching like people pat themselves in the back for what good work they do that you can kind of handle. So
the pageantry of it all was like a lot more suited for like the 1940s and 50s, you know.
It's definitely it was better than it's been in the last couple of years. It was just, I mean, for one, just obviously including all the technical awards. That was a lot of bullshit the last couple of years where they just cut out all the technical awards that people didn't, they claimed nobody cared about, but that's not necessarily the case, especially for movie lovers. And also just to show respect for the medium itself. So I thought that was good. And it was just a little bit more, straightforward with it. Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you. Like it kind of had an old school Hollywood vibe to it.
For the most part, it didn't seem very political or anything, which I think sometimes is like why people do get turned off on award shows too. It's like, all right, I'm already giving you like my time to watch, like, you know, you accept awards, and now you're telling me who to like vote for, or you're telling me like what your politics, and you know, so just like anything, I guess, like the NFL became like that too, like, you know, a little bit more political, and people stopped watching. I think that's why, I think that's the biggest turnoff for most people, to be honest with you, you know, because I think people do love movies, but they love movies because they mostly want to escape. I mean, sometimes you want to hear a story about some sort of thing that's political, but for the most part, I think you watch, you know, Top Gun Maverick because, you know, you don't want to know who the enemy is. It's a foreign enemy. It's somewhere, and I don't know who it is, but you know, I don't need to know. It's a movie for entertainment.
I was totally thinking about Top Gun Maverick when I was watching. So I've been rewatching all the Rocky movies, which has been fucking great.
Creed or?
I caught Creed, which was amazing. So this is like the first time I've seen any of the Creed movies. And I'm going to watch number 2 and 3 probably this weekend or in the next couple of days.
It's fucking great.
Yeah, I loved it. Everybody was fucking great in it. So, I mean, Coogler, so I was not expecting anything less. But rewatching Rocky 4 with Drago, which is obviously one of the most entertaining Rockies out there. It was definitely a trip to watch this movie that was just like so like America versus Russia, like in the 80s. And it was making, yeah. And it was just like so beautifully done, like setting up the conflict between the two countries. And it was just making me think like how, partly because that wouldn't really work today because, you know, you make a movie like that, it's like, well, let's hear Russia out. Part of the country is actually like that now. So it's not quite as like supporting of your own country as it used to be. And so that's why I was thinking of like Top Gun Maverick. It was like, yeah, that's one of the smartest decisions made, or it's just like good guy, bad guy. And like you read however you want to and do that. And then what else is going on behind the scenes and the subtext and whatnot.
Yeah, totally. It's an interesting choice. I thought it was a great choice. Just to kind of leave it like, you know, that this is a bad guy, you know, like it's fine. And going into like more stuff about, I don't know. I'm reading the book that you so amazingly gifted me, Cinema Speculation, and I'm just enjoying every single page. And I just love Tarantino.
It's great, right? Yeah.
Have you finished it or no?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I haven't yet. I'm almost halfway, and I just fucking love how unapologetic he is about everything. It's kind of like I'm one person who consumes things one way, makes things another way, and you can like it or you can get the fuck out of here and not like watch it. And I don't know, kind of think I think that's more refreshing now than ever to someone who actually goes in a room and knows exactly what the thoughts and feelings are, instead of like being dictated by somebody else, like what I should feel or what I should say, you know? And I kind of loving the honesty in the book.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's no surprise to you watching Tarantino for years, but to expect anything less than honesty would definitely not be a surprise or anything. So I'm happy you're enjoying it. Yeah. Like,
I mean,
what's up?
The brain on that guy in regards to like 70s film that like is where most of these films take place, at least so far that I've gotten through, is fucking uncanny. The critics he's talking about, what it was like in LA to experience these movies, it's recommended 1,000. It's probably one of the best books I've ever read. I mean,
nice. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know reading it, it was making me think, like, obviously it's no surprise. It's like he talks about, I heard him talk about it in a podcast. It's like, he just was born kind of at the right time. It's like he started watching movies in like obsessively in like 1969, 1970. Like he talks about, like, I was just lucky to be coming into the age of like, was what he thinks and what a lot of people think is one of the best eras of filmmaking ever throughout the 1970s. And that's just like the next 10 years of his early adolescence was just consuming all that like obsessively. So he talks about like how like it was just timing. A lot of it was just timing for him and what made such an impact on him into that. And it got me thinking, it was like the way he talks about 70s is certainly the way I would kind of talk about the 90s. Because obviously that was just my decade of like introduction to film and just like how impactful it was. And the 90s was kind of like a resurgence of the 70s style filmmaking. And so much great stuff. Just like his reverence for the 70s, that's how I feel about the 90s, is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, interesting. And I kind of love too, like the experiences. He's so visceral with what it was like to go to these films and like with the people in his life too, like his mom's like roster of boyfriends, then like, you know, the one guy who took him to like the cinema and then just like he never saw him again. I don't know. It's like, it's so good. It's so in his voice, like we talked about before. And it gets you excited about films. I mean, I want to watch every film that I haven't seen that he's talking about, of course.
Yeah. I mean, it's criticism, but more of influence. So he talks about movies that influence him and he puts some critique in it, but it's more about the effect the films had on him rather than saying what's good or bad about them. Yeah,
there was just a recent passage that I read about his name escapes me now, but a critic that he said he's been like dancing with throughout his entire career.
Yeah.
That just ripped him a new one and only gave him a good review up until like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And that was the only time he ever got a good review from him. And he was saying, I saw him in person one time and, you know, we kind of like have this like weird reverence for each other. Like, even though like he hates me, and I hate him, like it's kind of, you know, kind of an interesting relationship. I love that shit. Like those are the little nuggets that you get out of Tarantino in that book that like, you know, I didn't know about. Like he's like, I thought I'd get him. And that's like another thing, like how aware he is of critics and how influential they may be on these films. He talks a lot about Pauline Kael, which we were lucky enough to see that documentary at the Siskel Center, you and I.
Oh yeah.
But, and of course we love Roger Ebert, who he talks about a lot as well. And especially in the fact that he loved, you know, these exploitation films, like Ebert even wrote one, right? Of course. And so that's kind of like a nice little nugget to know, like even Tarantino is like, I thought I'd get him with Jackie Brown, but wasn't the case, you know?
Well, I mean, we haven't talked about it. It's the first time since it broke out, but like, have you heard that like it's official what his next movie is now?
No, I didn't know.
You haven't seen it. All right. So it is official now. He's shopping it around basically, but the absolute high level details of his supposedly final film are coming out. It's called The Movie Critic. And it's about a woman in the 1970s in New York. Basically going to be a Pauline Kael movie. Whether or not like that's how far into it, but that's actually it's at least the impetus for the movie is a Pauline Kael influenced movie. So obviously those are the only details that have been released. But it's basically happening, it came out faster than I was expecting. From all of his interviews, he was making it sound like it wasn't going to be for like another couple of years. So
I mean, he's busy as fuck. I mean, writing all these books and, you know, wow, he's really. Well, I for one cannot fucking wait.
Yeah, I know. It was I was
a horror movie that you were hoping it would be.
No, or maybe definitely not. Yeah. So he's got a show coming out. I still don't know all the details on that, but that one's official too. But yeah, so this is at the very early stages of it. But and it makes total sense, like because he always talked about Once Upon a Time was like he almost regretted that like it wasn't 10 for him because that would have been like his magnum opus because it was like such a sprawling epic of a film, and this. Yeah, and this one sounds like kind of what he was saying. It was like something smaller, more of like a coda, where it's like just he's already kind of like had the climax of his career, and now he's just kind of like a more chill movie, but maybe his like kind of come out to be his most personal at the same time.
Well, awesome. Can't fucking wait.
I know, because right when it came out, I was like, Darren's gonna love this, because we had such a good time watching that documentary at the Cisco Center, and I've rewatched that documentary since, and I loved rewatching the Ebert documentary at the same time with that one critic of Kael. They're just kind of dismissing her.
We have to say it, because I feel like anytime we're talking about Pauline Kael, like we have to say it. In the Ebert documentary, for anybody out there that made it this far in our podcast and is listening, Pat and I, of course, love Roger Ebert. And in Life Itself, which was our first episode of Remainders ever, there's this wonderful fucking quote from one of Ebert's friends, and he comes on the thing, he's like, I don't know Pauline Kael, I never met Pauline Kael, but fuck Pauline Kael.
Delivered so eloquently, and it's nothing malicious. It's obviously just a total friend and a lifelong friend of Ebert, who's just kind of supporting him because their career kind of butting heads sometimes, but so perfectly directed. Talk about like a good direction in a documentary, cutting to that friend. So,
oh yeah, that's a wonderful documentary. If you haven't seen it, check it out, and then go listen to our podcast on it. Episode 1 of Remainders.
Oh, what a great movie! I should reread that book. I love the book so much.
The last 2 things we should talk about. One, you went to go see Iggy Pop at the Morton Salt place. How was that venue?
The Salt Shed in Chicago. Yeah, it was the first time I'd been there. It was a great venue. The sound was great. It's huge. It's got like the full standing room area that I don't know how many can fit in, but it was a pretty large amount. And then all the seats just going straight back. So it's like in basically like a rectangle shape. So it's not round or anything. It's just like every single seat or position, you're just like looking straight at the stage.
So there's seats. It's pretty much all seating.
No, it's mostly standing, and then seating at the very back. And I don't know. I should look into what the capacity is. I'm maybe guessing 10,000. I don't know.
Wow, holy shit! I mean, yeah,
it might be less than that. I'm probably not that great at guessing capacity.
Close to like 3,000, if that makes sense.
Metro's 3,000.
I think it's close to 3,000, maybe like 2,500. But that's the place that you'd be driving on 90 to 94 and you'd see the Morton Salt Girl, with the umbrella. That was such a classic building. And I was interested in, what that was going to be like as a music. And I couldn't believe it was going to be a music venue, to be honest with you. So you said it was good, huh? Iggy Pop. That's not a bad one to break in your first show to.
Oh, it was so good. So I saw the Stooges in like 2007 when they went on their tour for their last album, The Weirdness, I think it was called. The Stooges with Mosquito star Ron Ashton. That was a great show. Sweatiest show I'd ever been to. That was at the Congress, which is still just sitting completely. It's like nobody's touched it since it's closed down. It's just got like graffiti on it. Just posters still on the side, just falling down. People have like put like some artwork on it, but like there's nothing going on with that entire building at all, which is unusual. I don't know. It's like the way Logan Square.
That place is falling down, but it's probably. See, I think it's like you probably can't like legitimately have anybody in there because it's probably like a danger. But right now for sure. I got a historical value.
Right.
That's probably what's going on. If I was to guess.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely, that's exactly what I was thinking. There's got to be something where it's like a push and pull of whether or not to restore it or tear it down. And obviously Chicago is, not an easy place to get the permits to just open up a music venue. So that's the other part of it. But yeah, I was just surprised at that. So yeah, I was excited to see Iggy solo for the first time. He did a lot more from Raw Power than I was expecting, which is his Iggy and the Stooges. So it's like kind of solo, kind of Stooges record. I think he played like almost the entire album throughout the set list. But yeah, he had some later hits, definitely some newer stuff. I would have liked to hear a little bit more of like his goofier, poppier songs. Wild Trouters or possibly, but would have been good to hear those. But he was still an amazing show. The guy's 75. He was crushing it on stage, moving around like the gymnast that he is. And I think that's certainly what's keeping him young after all these years.
Yeah. Love Iggy Pop, of course. And what an eclectic career he's had. I mean, spoken word albums too. Like, what do you do when you go on tour? It's like you can't make everybody happy, I suppose. I mean, I remember going to see Bob Dylan in concert and I couldn't recognize anything, not even his hits. Like, he just played them so different. It was just so... He
reconfigures his songs every time that I've seen him. I mean, the songs don't sound, he purposely reconfigures them. They don't sound anything like you would hear on the album and how they were originally produced.
Totally. That's I remember I used to go seeing the Smoking Popes and you'd want to sing along to the songs and like the lead singer Josh would like change melodies for things and you're like feel like an asshole in the crowd because you're like, singing something and like all of a sudden the guy on stage is singing it completely different. Like, oh shit,
Yeah.
Maybe I better not sing along.
Hell yeah.
But okay, cool. Well, I'm glad that was a good show for you.
Oh, so good. Yeah. No, I mean, to close out the Cure talk, I did get tickets for Minneapolis.
Oh, good.
So I'm going to do a little bit of a Midwestern road trip in June for a couple different shows. I might try to get Detroit, and Chicago sold out like instantly. That's the other thing. It's like with the way everything is with the verified fan stuff is now, it's like the tickets were pretty much gone instantly. Wasn't able to get them, which is, I've been seeing the Cure for years. And I think this is kind of the first time that like getting tickets is actually kind of hard. Which is just showing
that's the Hall of Fame, right? So maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe everyone's like, "Well, I got to go see him now." And
possibly. I mean, I think their reputation and influence on the '80s has just kind of grown a lot in the last 15 years. Since like I saw him first in like 2004. It certainly wasn't like a sold out stadium show or anything, but I think just with the consistent resurgence of 80s culture over the last like 20 years, people have definitely come around to like their influence on the 80s and everything since then. And definitely makes sense why they're just a legacy band. Say it again.
And you putting them on our 80 and our Remainders playlist, which
well, yeah, of course,
popular.
Yeah, I mean, what I say goes. So,
well, very cool. Yeah, this weekend. Soho House over here in West Hollywood is doing a screening of WALL-E.
Hell yeah.
Go see that. I haven't seen a screening there yet, and I'm going to go with my girlfriend to see WALL-E. And from what I remember when I first saw that film, it's another film from 2008. I remember it being very much like a forewarning tale about lazy human beings. So I'm kind of interested to revisit it. I hadn't seen it in a long time. I remember kind of ending that way where it was like our culture became so like used to like having everything done for us that kind of became like people who just like sat in your chair and like ate food that was delivered to you and didn't really move around much and stuff. But I can't really recall the film a ton. And so WALL-E, I remember loving it when I first saw it. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing it again.
I mean, I think you're going to really, really like it because of its old Hollywood influence. I mean, it's basically a silent film and like a musical for the first half, from what I remember. I know.
Isn't it funny? Like it's just I feel like it's so familiar, but I can't really recall everything about it. So
yeah, I haven't seen it for a couple of years, but it's definitely old Hollywood influenced, and so. I definitely anticipate you enjoying that. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's definitely one of Pixar's best. So for sure.
Yeah, I've been trying to get out to the theater as much as possible. I'm not really interested in anything that's in the theater right now. So I pop up. I was like, let's go over there and see that. It's like might be fun to see that in a different theater too, because I always go down the street over here.
I got plenty to watch this weekend actually. So I'm going to see Champions.
Oh, right.
With Woody Harrelson teaming up with one of the Farrelly brothers. So it's like their Kingpin reuniting. So definitely got to go see that. And then Music Box is playing Inside with William Dafoe, which I didn't really know too much about, but apparently the premise is he's a cat burglar who gets trapped inside of like a penthouse that he's trying to rob, and just like it gets like sealed up and like nobody's coming, and apparently he's just trapped in there kind of permanently in this penthouse with like tons of art and this beautiful setting, and it becomes like a prison movie basically. This is all the synopsis that they gave, so it's not really giving anything away to the film, but like that's the premise, and so William Dafoe at the Music Box, so I can't turn that one down. And then I'll try to catch Creed 3.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And then I'll try to catch Creed 3 to finish up that entire series. So
at Music Box?
No, I'll figure that somewhere else. Probably Alamo, which I've been enjoying. The Alamo Draft House since it opened up here in Chicago. It's pretty dope theater.
Tom just told me about that. He went there the other day in Chicago, and I was like, "Oh,
really?
Yeah,
nice."
Goes there a lot, and I'm interested to see that experience and what that's about.
Oh man, the first time I went, so they got a lot of movie VHS memorabilia, and they have like a constant like infomercial stream, like old, kind of like the previews you would see on like a VHS a tape, like showing like what new VHS tapes are coming out and what movies and whatnot. And I only caught the very end of it, but I looked up end of a promo for Suncoast. Yep. Yeah. So I didn't get to see the whole promo of what was in it or what else went on, but it was just the very end of a Suncoast video promo. So I was definitely very happy to see that. So
there's a really cool like little store, and it's funny because man, it was probably like this was like the first time anybody decided to make like another movie store out of VHSs over here in Silver Lake, but it's now becoming like a thing, where you can go to these Alamo Draft Houses and whatever, and look through VHSs and stuff like you used to, and they have like those like promos and stuff like that, and I feel like it's now become like part of that experience, like all like the old experience of going to a theater or a movie store are coming back, because like how do we get people to come out to this stuff again? It's like experiences that they remember, not these recliners and bringing you nachos during the movie kind of experience.
I mean, I'm not down for any of that. Like I'm okay with it being the aesthetic if need be, if you're showing like good movies, but like I couldn't give a shit about the recliners or ordering food. I got to be honest. I've had a couple of bad experiences with people just like being slobs. It's like people are eating like chicken wings like right next to you while you're watching like a movie. It's like it's not ideal at all. So I'm like I put up with it because they screen good movies, but
that's what I mean. You're someone chomping on a nacho the whole time.
It's definitely not like what I would prefer or anything. Yeah. So it is what it is. Speaking of Silver Lake, I'm looking at your shirt. Just really quick, I want to look at that. So I'm just a dummy. So is this the design in that? Darren, we're looking. If you're just listening, we're looking at Darren's shirt of Silver Lake, and it's got the design. Is that the design from the Elliott Smith Either Or album? So it is.
Literally, this where that picture was taken for Elliott Smith's thing.
Yeah.
Literally, the street over.
Okay, so it is an actual piece of art that he took a picture of for the album.
Yes.
Okay. So because I'm definitely familiar with the album, I just didn't, I kind of always attribute that symbol to Elliott Smith, but it was obviously a piece of art before.
Totally. And one of my things before I moved here was like, I wanted to see the wall where he took the picture in the mural of, and I went from my girlfriend's house and walked, and then when I moved here, I literally moved right next door to it. So like I walk over there to get a beer. It's like a bar now, so you can go inside and get a beer. It's been kind of like a thing where they painted over it for years and like repainted it and everything like that. But they always put this back in.
Okay. Oh yeah.
So known for like Elliott Smith and everything, and people will write little messages to Elliott and stuff. So I made this shirt for available on darrenverrell.com.
I haven't seen this yet. So you did the design for this one.
Yep. So that's
Hell yeah.
Go and get your own Darren Verrell Silver Lake shirt. So in Los Angeles, California, Silver Lake.
Hell yeah.
Yep.
You could be just supporting the neighborhood, or you could be supporting the great movie based in it. Whatever you want to be doing.
It's right down the street from the Vista I told you I live right next to, and that's been closed since I've moved out here. But recently there's been a lot of like repainting and stuff like that, and people are like getting really excited that it's going to be opening soon. Of course, I'm one of them, and that's another place I think I told you Tarantino bought. So it'll be, I guarantee, like the experience of going to see a movie at New Beverly will probably be the same over here, which I am so for. Going to see a movie at New Beverly is so great. The problem with New Beverly is it's really hard to park at. Really hard to park there. But here I could walk to it like in a matter of seconds. So I can't wait. I don't think I'm going to move for a few years just to make sure I get the experience of walking to the Vista.
I'm just thinking of Woody Allen when he's complaining about not walking anywhere in LA, which is the opposite of your experience. I forget if it's Manhattan or Annie Hall, but he's like, "Oh, it's been 5 minutes. We haven't driven anywhere yet," or something like that.
Yeah, it's so most of LA is like that. Luckily, the Silver Lake, Los Feliz is a little different than that.
Yeah, for sure. So good.
Song of the week.
Ready for music?
Yeah.
What have you been listening to? I need some new stuff. What are you feeling?
So I'm not listening to really much of anything lately, except
for our playlist. So.
Well, yes, of course.
Yeah.
but the like I did last week, I kind of want to go back to like some stuff that is relevant to me, or stuff I've loved like extremely in the past, and also something that I just went to the concert, so I felt like it was relevant. And today, Bayside released their second in the series of three, or I think it's three, but at least two so far, EPs. The first one was the red EP, and the second one is the blue EP, which is out today. And I did the Elm art for it, so I'm pretty fucking excited about that because I love Bayside. I've always loved them, and I did it with a friend out here who's done his art for them, the Elm art for them for years, and I just did the design of the mandala that's on it. So I'm like really, really excited that I got to do that. That it's like a nice thing, and I got to meet the guys at the show. They played in LA a few weeks ago. And, you know, was like, I designed the art, and like they're like, dude, we love it. And I was like, I love you guys. Geeked out a little bit and stuff like that. I've always really loved their band. But the experience of being at the show, they're friends with like the Smoking Popes, and they played like a cover of Megan there, and I've seen the lead singer Anthony do that song acoustic at the Double Door on a solo tour in 2016, and then I saw him play it at the show here in LA, and I was like, man, these guys, they just like really know how to like bring like the fans together. The place was packed, it was sold out, and they play this song that's like an acoustic song they've been playing for years called Don't Call Me Peanut, and it's on their first record. And so even though I'm talking about the blue EP that came out today, I want to go back to it's actually their second record, because they played this at the show, and it's just like the whole crowd is singing it back at them, and it's just one of those experiences where like, you know, it's a song that means so much to so many people, and it's just like to be in the room when they're singing it. I've seen them a bunch of times, and I've seen them play it a bunch, but hadn't really seen it in a while, and it just reminded me of how great this band is. And also like the song he's singing so much about like you know, a girl that like we all realize, you know, that love is a complicated thing. So listen to the song, enjoy it. Don't Call Me Peanut by Bayside is my song. I listen to it all the time, so it's my song of the week for everybody out there.
Oh yeah. Loved it. Yeah, no, so I'm looking at the artwork on the blue EP. I remember seeing this when you initially released it or something. I know I've seen that. So
yeah, it's the same thing for the red. It's just now they made it blue, right?
Yeah. Okay. Looks amazing. Hell yeah. I know.
In fact, I can show you, since we're talking about it. This is
there it is.
Yeah, so it's hard to see because it's an etching, but that's the if you're watching, that's the design that I did in there. So, and then you got on the back, somewhere on there. Where is it?
Yep, illustration by Darren Varel.
There you go. Look at that.
Look at that.
Your
Fuck yeah.
Remainder's partner.
Fucking Renaissance man.
Yeah, he made it to the big time. So yeah, that's my song of the week. What do you got?
Love it. All right, so I'm sticking with metal for an appropriately metal episode. So Lorna Shore is a band that had one of my favorite CDs from last year. The album Pain Remains came out late in 2022. Fucking great album. Definitely one of my favorite of the year. Kind of a combination of black metal, screaming metal, and kind of an orchestral influence into a lot of their songs. This has just like my song pick is the closer on the entire album, and it's got a little bit of violin to open and close, and it just that kind of orchestral vibe kind of flows throughout the entire album actually, and so that's kind of like one reason why I've love this album so much. But yeah, so the song is Pain Remains 3. It's part 3 in a 3-part closer. What's that?
Fucking song titles are always so good.
Pain Remains 3, in a Sea of Fire. So I think I actually texted you actually even about this band, but I think I described it as in Lord of the Rings, if the orcs were getting wasted before the battle at Mordor, at a pub, this is the song and the vibe and the album that they would be listening to.
Yes, 100%. I totally remember.
I mean, that's just my stupid attribution because everything I think about the Lord of the Rings probably once a day, and Peter Jackson's adaptation because greatest movies of all time. But this album definitely kind of captures the metal and war vibes of the orcs for whatever reason. I mean, the singing is pretty rough and amazing, and just kind of resonated in my mind. But also, it might have been like a subconscious thing. Lorna Shore, Howard Shore did the music for Lord of the Rings, so maybe I was just putting that together in my own minds. Although I gotta say, like a lot of their lyrics, definitely kind of have the vibe of a Lord of the Rings setting with war and whatnot, and no meaning in life.
We ain't had nothing but maggoty bread for 3 stinking days.
Meat's back on the menu, boys. So
that was great. I remember seeing those scenes because we would play it at Suncoast all the time. You remember that?
Oh, I'm pretty sure I remember vividly. You and I, we went as a group at Suncoast to see at least the second one because I vividly remember you pointing out Billy Babbitt. I'm forgetting the actor's name. Billy Babbitt, Chucky.
Oh, Grima Wormtongue.
Yeah, the character Grima Wormtongue.
God, you're right. What is his name? Fuck. Also in Rob Zombie's Halloween.
Yep. Oh man, we're embarrassing ourselves right now for getting his name.
This is insanely stupid.
His daughter actually played Charles Lee Ray, an earlier version of Charles Lee Ray in the Chucky series, which I fucking love so much. That is up,
right?
Yeah. His daughter's actually been pretty good in a lot of the later Chucky movies. So,
okay, dude.
Brad Dourif. What
Brad Dourif.
assholes? God,
Come on.
assholes for not knowing that.
I feel like we just lost a lot of credibility.
we sure did. And we should have known that off the bat. Both of us forgot his name at that point.
Well, yeah, no. So I vividly remember you pointing out that's who the character was playing Wormtongue, because we were all at Suncoast very excited to see part 2 of Lord of the Rings. So because it was just Fellowship probably played for nonstop for like a year until the part 2 and part 3 came out.
Yeah, until it got all corporate-y, and then we had to play whatever movies they wanted us to play.
But that's what made Lord of the Rings so special. It was a sanctioned one that everybody actually wanted to watch. So that we were more than happy to put on and just leave on all day. So
unless like some mom would come in and get like pissed off that we were like playing it because like there'd be like some part that their kid started crying about, and then we'd have to switch it up. But yeah.
Sir, is that appropriate?
Yeah.
Fuck off.
In the meantime, there's like people in the back stealing DVDs. Opening them up. Well, that was such a great job. I miss it.
Oh, good times. The impetus for all this movie praise that we got going on that I love so much. But yeah, any other closing thoughts? Anvil is a fucking great movie. I love it. This was our American movie double feature, and we're excited to watch anything next. So.
Yeah, I mean, we will talk about what comes next. I don't think we have yet, but I'm excited for that. And yeah, thanks for introducing me to another great film that I probably wouldn't have seen if it hadn't happened for you. You are killing it this year on your recommendations. And so I know we're building up to that piece de la resistance, which is RoboCop. We'll get to that soon. I know you're chomping at the bit for it, but in the meantime, thanks for these great recommendations.
It'll be a legacy episode at some point. So yeah.
All right. Well, have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time.
See you, bud.
Bye.